Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. McCoy, and it's time for our 7 o'clock gathering. If this is your first time, I want to welcome you to this space. We gather at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. We also have a conference call line, so when people are there, we're grateful for that as well, and I greet them as well. So it's 7 o'clock on the dot, and I wanted to really start a little earlier, but I'm starting with giving something. Some of you know, many of you know, that I like to give. I like to gift things. And so on this evening, I want to gift the actual book that I have been walking us through for the past, this is the third week. So it's a 3-week series on racialized trauma. And so if you've been here all 3 weeks, I want you to have an opportunity to be gifted a copy of this book, because I'm trying my best to explain these things. But if you have the book, it's going to be much better than what I've been doing. And if by chance I misspoke, about any of this great man, Mr. Resma Menachem's work, then I would apologize to him, and then I encourage you to get the book. And so I want to gift a copy of the book to one person on this evening. So here's the question. And you have to have attended all of the other gatherings, in regards to this, because I want to be sure that the book goes to someone who has been with me for the past, 3 weeks now, and someone who can look in here and kind of follow and do these body exercises, okay? So again, it needs to be someone who is live, and it needs to be someone who has been here in all 3 sessions. So here's the question. Are you ready? Here's the question. When considering the liturgical calendar, what is our next event, if you will? What's the next major thing on the Christian calendar? It's on Wednesday, so maybe I helped you, to jog your memory. It's something Wednesday. How about that? So whoever answers first, and I'm looking, and I see it according to how it shows up here on Facebook Live. So what is that? You know what it is. It's something Wednesday. If you can answer that, and you've been here, you're here live, and you've been here all 3, today makes the 3rd one, then I'm going to buy you a copy of this. I'm going to send it to you. Okay? Because again, if you read it, it's going to be much better than what I've been doing. So whoever answers first, I'm looking. I don't see anything yet, just so you all know. Okay, not Lent. It's I said something Wednesday is really the answer I'm looking for. So you're right. It will be the Lenten season, but what is that Wednesday? What is it called? It will be the Lenten season. There you go. Sister Barbara Williams, congratulations. You're the first person. I saw you say Lent, and then I saw you say Ash. And so Ash Wednesday is the answer. And I see you, Sister Michelle, you got it right too, and Sister Tracy. But I saw Miss Barbara Williams say Lent, and then she came back and said Ash. So Miss Williams, if you would just send me an email to drtalikamccoy@gmail.com, and I will gift you a copy of this book. Okay, so congratulations to you. So again, I thank you all for being here again. Many of you have been here the other couple of times, and you'll be here next week, hopefully, when I conclude this series. But if you're just joining, thank you for being here. This is our 3rd week, and I've been walking us through this book entitled My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies by Resma Menachem. And I want to really, in this session, I want to be sure that we understand, as I've been talking about this, and if you've missed the other 2, then just go back, okay? But in this book, one of the things that he talks about is how many English words can be slippery. They can be loaded, especially when it comes to race. And so he takes time to define terms that he uses in the book. So I've been talking to you about it, and I hope that I've made myself clear, but just in case I missed a couple of things, and just in case this is your first time joining for this series, listen to what he means when he says Black body or the African American body. Listen to what he means when he says the white body, and then listen to what he means when he says police bodies, okay? Because he talks about those particular persons throughout this book. All right. So before I move forward, just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So when he says the black body or the African American body, it's shorthand for those bodies of people who are of African descent that live in America. All right. And you may already know that, but I'm so glad that the author takes time to, keep all readers on the same page. So he says that those bodies have really largely shaped America's culture, and those bodies have adapted to American culture. And he says that if someone is a citizen of like Kenya, and they've never been to the United States, or if someone is a new arrival to America from like Haiti or Cameroon or somewhere like that, he says that this book may not apply to that person, just at least not obviously, not immediately. Because he says that aside from those persons, having dark skin, they may not recognize themselves in these pages because they have not experienced being in a black body in the United States of America. So he's not suggesting that non-Americans without white skin aren't routinely affected by the global reach of white body supremacy. And remember what he says that is, white body supremacy. He says that instead of saying white supremacy, it would probably serve us better to call it white body supremacy, because white bodies automatically benefit from being in those particular bodies. So white body supremacy. It does not matter how that white body thinks. It does not matter how that white body feels or acts or the decisions that that body makes. In America, white body supremacy is about the fact that that body automatically benefits because it is white in this American space. And so he says that at the end of the day, some people may be fortunate enough to have little or no personal experience with America's version of racialized trauma. So if you are in a black body, but a lot of what I've been talking about, you're like, no, I hadn't really dealt with that. That's okay. That's okay. And then there are strong resiliency factors, that have mitigated some of the effects of white body supremacy on the lives of people who may be from Africa, for example, living in a black body. But again, they haven't experienced America's version of racialized trauma. So this book may not immediately seem obvious that it relates to them, okay? So that's what he means when he says the black body or the African American body. Now, what does he mean when he says the white body? The white body. Well, Mr. Resma Menakem, in this book, I'm still walking us through, and I'm trying to do my best. There's a lot of good information in here, but I'm just pulling out some things. You can purchase it yourself. But when he says the white body, it's shorthand for the bodies of people of European descent who live in America, who have largely shaped and adapted to America's culture, and who don't have dark skin. I see you saying that makes sense. Yes, I thought it made sense too. I did. He says the term white body lacks precision, but it's short and simple. If you're a member of this group, you'll recognize it when I talk about the white body's experience. So sometimes we don't agree because, hey, we're living in different bodies in America, and America has created this term whiteness. And because America created whiteness, we live in that reality. So then because that was created, there is a white body and there is a black body. But then he doesn't just stick with those. And we may not understand one another sometimes because of those differences, those said differences. So I don't know what it is to live in a white body in America, just as you may not know, of course, what it like to live in a black body in America. So when he says police bodies, it's shorthand for the bodies of law enforcement professionals, regardless of their skin color. These professionals include police detectives, who we will call cops, or, nowadays the po-po. He doesn't have that in here, but mall security guards, members of SWAT teams, and the police chiefs of big cities, suburbs, and small towns. So he says that these categories, what it does for this book is that these categories, I see you, Sister Shaw, hello there, and Sister, I keep saying Brighton. Your last name is actually Britton, I think, and you've never corrected me. God bless you, Sister Sharon. I think it's Britton, not Brighton. But hello there, Sister Tracy, Durham. I see you all, Tucker, Williams, Sister Samantha, everyone. So glad that you're here. Brother Bill, you too as well. I see you all greeting me, so that's why I'm saying hello back. So these categories that I just shared from the book, these categories, what they do is they provide ways for Mr. Resma Menakem to communicate, not boxing anyone into anything or forcing anyone into anything, because it's possible that none of these, terms fit you. He says it's possible. So he is not trying to, this book is not a panacea. Panacea is a cure-all. It's not a panacea to where he's trying to prescribe something to everybody and he knows exactly who you are and how things are. What he does know is that white supremacy or white body supremacy is real in America and you are experiencing it in your body. So he respectfully names particular types of bodies that would experience this. But he does say that it's possible. Good evening, Dr. Banks. I see you saying good evening. It's possible that none of these fit you. Or maybe you fit into more than one. Because think about it. Oh, I see you, Sister Britton, saying that's fine. Well, I like to say people's names correctly. So thank you for your kindness. But I apologize. I've been saying your name wrong for so long. But he says, don't try to squeeze yourself into one category in particular. So I'm going to move on now. So I just want to do that. If this is your first time joining since I've been in this series. I've been walking through this book, My Grandmother's Hands, and what Resma Menakem talks about is racialized trauma. And what he does is he is a healer. He is a therapist. He's not a theologian. He's not a literary analyst. He's not any of those things, but he is indeed a therapist and he's a healer. And so he says that in order for us to work on the trauma that we experience, even in America, we have to start with our bodies. He says that white supremacy or white body supremacy and the trauma that it causes, it lives primarily in our bodies, not in our thinking brains. So when you try to think your way out of racism, it's not going to be the most effective pathway to healing. Just thinking yourself out of it. It can be part of it because we know that talk therapy is important. It's valuable. It has its place. And as he says, it happens in our bodies. And I talked about that a little more last week than I will this week. I talked about how, regardless of what's cognitive, it seems like something that a white woman just automatically does. For example, clenches her purse because there's a black man coming into the elevator. So then the black body, not just a thinking thing, but immediately won't get in the elevator, as black men have told me, with a white woman to begin with. Or even with, one black man told me, even with a little white girl. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's not just here, but it's in here. There's something that happens to you. So we need to understand trauma in the way of, one of the things he talks about in this book is that trauma was not invented in 1619. We know about the bloody transactions of slavery in America. And sometimes we as Americans are so arrogant that we think that everything started with us. Well, the fact of the matter is, yes, when Jamestown, Virginia, when those first slave ships, reached the banks of Jamestown, Virginia, absolutely, there was trauma that happened, but that is not where it began. So that's the first thing, because really for thousands of years before that, human beings murdered one another. Human beings butchered, tortured, oppressed, abused, conquered, enslaved, and colonized one another. Now I'm a Christian, and many of you watching me are too. So how dare we think that this type of trauma began in 1619 when we consider Jesus Christ? If you don't know any other torture, if you don't know anything else about being abused, if you don't know anything else about a body being tortured, you know about Jesus on the cross. That's why what I'm talking about here is so very important, because all of these things connect. So for us, to think that 1619 it began, no, Jesus on the cross, we see Jesus on a tree hanging, as just as I know my ancestors were lynched hanging from trees like fruit. So when we think about the late 1600s, the English controlled nearly all the colonized territory in what would become the United States of America. So in England in the 1500s, in the 1600s, he talks about how it was not gentle times, even back in the 1500s and the 1600s, because people were routinely, listen to this, and I know you know this, burned at the stake. Remember, I'm sure you've seen movies, right? Where they believe that people were witches and things like Joan of Arc and things like that, right? And so people were burned at the stake. They were tortured. They were hung and otherwise brutalized. Now, he doesn't talk about Jesus like I just did, but we'll talk about it, especially being believers. So we know that. And I see you, Miss Barbara, Sister Barbara, saying Emmett Till. There you go. Yes, so there is a history of torture. So understand that many English folks, they fled to America and they were victims of firsthand of brutality firsthand. So they witnessed trauma even as they fled one place to come to another place. So when they were trying to get away from poverty and they were trying to get away from starvation and overcrowding and the Great Plague, they brought that trauma with them in their bodies. So it seems likely that many English colonists, they made their way to America deeply traumatized. So think about that. And they would have brought it with them throughout American history. We can see that. We don't always like to call it trauma. Sometimes we like to say, well, it's just a bad time. But we got through it and then we just moved past it. We don't like to label it as trauma because it may be that when we label it as trauma, we don't know what to do with that. That word is so loaded. So rather than say that I was traumatized, let's just say I just hit a rough patch. We may say that. I was between a rock and a hard place. See, I was down, but I wasn't out. You see, so throughout America's history, a lot of these things were not said, and they are especially not taught in our formal school system because we don't want people to know about this, but throughout American history, white bodies have colonized, oppressed, and murdered black bodies. So it's no wonder that we don't want to teach that part. We want to teach about Martin Luther King Jr., you remember your history books in school. We teach about maybe Rosa Parks is in there, may say something about segregation, but nothing about this idea and this fact that in America's history, white bodies have colonized, oppressed, and murdered black bodies. But well before the United States was founded, powerful white bodies colonized, oppressed, and murdered themselves, white bodies. So if I inflict pain on my own, then why do you think I'm not going to inflict pain on you? Because that's the way of my world. So our concept of whiteness has been placed on a pedestal when whiteness is not real to begin with, just like race is not really real. It's a social construct. But we've idolized whiteness because many times we don't know the history and the true ideals of whiteness. But white supremacy is set to be sure that we don't know. That's why we don't have certain books at our disposal. And we need somebody like me, for example, to try real hard, and I'm trying really hard, to give us this type of information. Because it's already there in a book. It's not something I'm creating. I mean, I put my own thoughts in there and my own experiences, but it's in book like these. And I have so many other books that I just pray I live long enough. And again, I teach this course. I teach a course at Shaw University Divinity School entitled Domestic Abuse and Violence and the Church. And then I also teach a theological response to trauma. So thanks be to God that there is a seminary, I know of at least one, that has a course like this, to where people who want to serve in the local church can broaden their view, broaden their scope, because as I said last week, everybody in that pew, Pastor, Everybody in that pew, preacher, everybody in that pew, minister and Sunday school teacher, everybody in that pew has some type of trauma that they bring into that church every week. And we need to be competent enough to know what to do with it. Now, we can gloss over it like we always do, right? And just say, I got a feeling everything's going to be all right. Well, it's going to be all right until I walk out of this church. I would appreciate if you gave me some tools. You know, all the other things that we say. And I'm not saying those things are wrong to say. I'm saying it's wrong to not address it. I mentioned COVID. That was a collective trauma that many of our churches have done nothing about to aid the hurt that lies within people. We wonder why they don't come to church. Some people are not coming to church because of that trauma. They used to sit beside someone who died during COVID. I'm not saying they had to die from COVID, but they just have not been able to do anything with that. They're holding that pain, and we're not giving them space to lament. Now, I applaud pastors, you know, and those people who have the power to do it, who I've talked about this to, and you did something. So that means we don't leave this space saying that every church is not doing it, because I know some pastors who will listen and will hear some things like this, and then they will respond because they care about the trauma that lies within all of us. And it's not just up to the pastors, it's up to the therapists, it's up to the teachers, it's up to the preachers, you know, because everybody's not called to be a pastor in a local church. But if God has called you to be a minister, don't you let those ways that they separate us as pastor, associate minister. Remember, associate minister is not even in the Bible. So you're either a preacher or a minister or you're not. So we've created those things. But what I'm saying to you is that's fine. It can be that way in the local church, but don't you let those types of categories stop you from doing all the work that God has called you to do as God's minister. And you don't need a church to do that. And if you can't do it in the church, you need to do it in a space where people are hurting and they need to, that word above my head, heal. All right? I see you, Sister Barbara, Miss Barbara Williams. In healthcare, new nurses feel oppressed during their orientation. Oh my goodness. So, okay, let's hear what she's saying. So there are nurses in our churches. They're feeling oppressed during orientation. Okay, let's see. Hello there, Brother Corey. A theological response to trauma. Yes, that's the name of the course I teach. Sounds like a powerful course and resource. I tell you, I am just grateful. You know, I don't know how long I'll be able to teach that course, but I will continue to do this work because, again, what I am doing is not contingent upon context. I don't have to do it in the church. I don't have to do it in a school, but it's going to get done. Why? Because people need healing. All right? People really do need healing, especially with all of this loaded information, you know, that we have access to. You start reading these things and it's just like, oh my goodness, this is almost traumatizing me just reading this. Well, that's why you have to do something with it when you get the information. That's why he has these activities, and we're going to do another one as we did last week. He has these activities, these body practices, okay? So we can know what to do with it. So we really have to think about these terms like the word white, like I said, or whiteness, that creation of whiteness. One of the things that Mr. Resva Menakem mentions is that the terms white person, white woman, or white man, they didn't even appear until the 1680s. So don't think that that's just something solid, you know, to stand on. That's just a creation, just like my earring. Nothing more, nothing less. Somebody created it, and there it is. And it's there. This is here because I want it to be. America. Whiteness is there because you want it to be. So it was only in the late 16th century that white Americans began to really earnestly formalize a culture of white body supremacy. So it was just a word at first, like whiteness, but then it became culture. It's a culture, you know, and in that culture, you know, it was designed to really place this body above other bodies. That's why I said to you the last time, white is the standard. This is why we say the black musician. Because if you just say musician, in America, the standard is white. So you have to say the Asian teacher. You have to say the black preacher. because America has designed this idea, this culture, the dominant culture says that it's white. So you have to distinguish everybody else because they are a other. You see? So millions of black bodies have been really victimized, and really this culture of white supremacy is designed to colonize even the minds of people of all colors. I went to South Africa and I still saw this same thing. It's not just an American thing, you know, we're leading the way perhaps, but no, it's not just an American thing. I went to South Africa and I saw things that screamed white supremacy. And I thought to myself, oh, this thing spreads. I mean, travel and you'll see. I was in Italy. I saw things that screamed white supremacy. Now, I didn't tell this to the people that I was with, but it was for me to observe so that when I read books like this, I have living examples and I can give you this with confidence to say, oh no, it's real and it goes beyond where you are right now. And it starts with you to start doing something, the healing, something to do. So for Americans, he says to really outgrow the bondage of white supremacy, because again, it's also a mental bondage. It's not just something that we read in a book or just an idea or something we talk about during Black History Month. No. It is something that we need to outgrow as Americans and really as human beings, because again, it runs the gamut. It's beyond the United States. And if we're going to outgrow it, he suggests this bondage of white body supremacy. He says white Americans need to imagine themselves in black, red, and brown bodies, and white Americans need to experience what those bodies had to endure. White bodies need to do that. White bodies also need, he says, to do the same with their own bodies. And they really need to do the same with the bodies of their own ancestors. So it's happened to your ancestors too, you see. And so because of that, you pick up that idea and you perpetuate that. And you have to ask yourself, okay, wait a minute. What does that feel like when I inflict that type of pain? What does that black man feel like when I clutch my purse? What does that black person feel like when I follow them in the store? What do they feel like when I make a telephone call to the police? When there's really no criminal activity at all, but I make a telephone call because I simply feel threatened because that black body threatens my existence in my white body. Where is that coming from? So that's what he offers. So now I want to do a body practice. I want to do a body practice again. I told us that, you know, he is a healer, he is a therapist, and he has these body practices. Because as you read this book, and even as you're listening to me, I think you would agree, it really gets heavy. It gets heavy. And as he mentioned, the idea is not for anyone to feel guilty or shame. Been doing that for years. Okay, in order to heal from racialized trauma and really have that pathway to mending our hearts and our bodies, we have to do the work. And the reason why racial reconciliation has not really gone as far as I think it could is because we don't want to do the hard parts. As I mentioned before, we want the token experiences, you know, like, oh, look at me, you know, I'm a black person with a white person, or look at me, I'm an Asian person with a white person. You know, it's not just about the gathering of bodies. And I've tried to talk to my white colleagues about this, even within the churches. We can do the work of racial reconciliation, but the reason why there needs to be reconciliation, think about a marriage. If people are married and then they go their separate ways, but they want to reconcile, they don't simply just come back together. They have conversations and they work and they say, okay, well, what got us here? What things did you do? What things did I do? What's the responsibility here? Let's talk about that, because if we're going to reconcile, that means something broke, right? You know, and we kind of need to like mend it. But there's no mending without doing the actual hard parts. And so this is the body practice, okay? So this is the last thing. All right. So here we go. I've talked about a lot. So as we conclude on this evening, I want to make sure everybody sleeps tonight. This is what I say to my students. I try to let them go about 30 minutes early so that they can decompress, because I want you to rest. I want you to get sleep. I want you to take care of yourself. And as the leader, I want to be sure that I take care of you. So I'm glad to see that he does that. I do that. I didn't know it was in a book like this, but it just made sense to me because I am in tune with how my body is feeling at times. I'm like, okay, no, that's not feeling right. And I'm not talking about being sick or having a cold or a flu. I'm saying what you just said to me, that did something. And I'm in my mind while you're still talking, I'm thinking, okay, what's that about? Because I have to respond to you or not. And you're going to benefit from me listening to my body so that you won't have to listen to me maybe say some other things or do some other things. So I was delighted to see that somebody wrote about it. So this is an example of a body practice. And I hope that my students, I hope that they did do these things. For now, this is what he says. So we may not be able to do this exactly how he says it, but you can do it in your own time. I see you, Miss Tucker. You have to work at it to make a change or have understanding. That's right. And I am still working. Lord knows I'm working. Whoo! I heard somebody say woo-saw. And you know what? The other thing is you have to really work because like even now, I don't know if you all have seen it, but in our culture, people see something and it could be something really cute or something really funny or just something that they can't unsee. And they'll say something like, that's going to live rent-free in my head forever. Have you heard people say that? That's going to live rent-free in my head. Well, a lot of what I'm talking about, and this is not book, I'm talking, I'm just like teaching my class right now, if you will. But a lot of that idea of living rent-free in your head. How many things live rent-free in your head right now? And I would say, I don't really altogether know what people mean when they say that, but this is my understanding of it. If something is living rent-free, that means it's costing you something. Somebody's living in your house right now, and you still have to pay the rent, right? And they're not paying anything, so it's costing you something. So just remember that everything that lives rent-free in your head is costing you something. All right. So do the work to eliminate some of those things. And for those of us who are Christians, the Bible speaks so many times about the mind and even being renewed, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So watch what you let live rent free in your head. I always say, if I'm going to be feeling some type of way, you're going to be feeling some type of way. That way, it's going to cost something, for you to be in my head. You see, it's going to cost something. So no, this is going to be an even exchange and we're going to be fine. Okay. So here comes a body practice. Okay. So you can just listen, for now, he says, find a quiet, comfortable place where you can be alone for 10 to 15 minutes. So you can do this after. Okay. Just come back to this video. Okay. So I'm just going to read it and then I want you to do it. If you can't do it tonight, do it tomorrow or something, okay? Fast forward to this part. For now, find a quiet, comfortable place where you can be alone for 10 to 15 minutes. Once you've settled, take a deep breath. Then consider the following questions. When were your ancestors first declared black or white or Asian or American Indian or something else? Who determined that they would be declared this? How was that determination communicated to your ancestors? Where did this happen? What were the surrounding circumstances? So then how did this categorization change your ancestors' immediate situation? How did it change their future? How is your body responding to these questions? Where do you experience resistance or constriction? Where do you sense in your body a recognition or an affirmation? Do these questions seem insightful and important or stupid and pointless? Do you want to laugh? Do you want to cry, or do you want to cuss? Do you want to run away? My friends, that's it for tonight. That's the body exercise. So a lot has been said here. I wish you rest on this evening. I pray that you will do the hard work. And if anything, any person or place gets in your way, you will have the courage to say that I am on a journey and I'm not going to let anything stop me now. Be blessed. Have a good evening. We'll conclude on next week. You're welcome, Mr. Mark Daniels. Rest well. Thank you for being here.